James' brother and I have been having a discussion. He's a programmer, is very optimistic about this technology. I am somewhat more cautious, mainly because in my profession I've dealt with forms of artificial intelligence where people try and use it to come up with new equations on how things work. And it has an enormous amount of potential, and it has an enormous amount of downside. The downside mainly is that it will tell you what you want to know. And that's not good. What you really want to know is what you don't know. And it has the potential of siloing you again. It's basically mathematical. There's nothing magic about this. Somebody had to program a computer to do whatever it does. There is nothing magical about any computer programming whatsoever. It takes a human being, and it's all mathematics. And there's nothing intelligent about it, other than the fact that a human being wrote equations to do all of what it does. It is the basis of ChatGTP, which is the most, I guess, knowledgeable, most talented in known artificial intelligence approach, is what they call large language model. And what it does is it aggregates all of the written documents that you feed it. So you're in charge of feeding it documents. And it will, they call it scraping. What it does is it gathers all these documents and looks at strings of words, actually letters and spaces. And it determines mathematically what is most likely to follow one letter after another letter. And it does, you can imagine, you can just think of the space of a string of a 12-word sentence. Now, think of how much memory that would take. Think of stringing together all of the words in the Encyclopedia Britannica. Now think of stringing together all the words of the books in the Northwestern University Library. And you're stringing them all together, and you have these mathematical, what they call matrices, that can determine the statistical reliability of what follows what, given all of that information. Now, what this requires is huge amounts of memory. So artificial intelligence is based upon huge warehouses full of computers that store all of this data and crunch it mathematically to come up with the answer to your question, which might be, please give me a paragraph to introduce artificial intelligence. And it will look at all of this and write a paragraph for you. Now, it of course writes a paragraph that is statistically likely to occur given that question. Right. So that's what's called a large language model, which is the most used one. There are other models though that are out there of which I know a lot less. Let's put it that way.
Some of them are personalized, as I understand. They try to talk as if they are another person talking. That's in their programming. Somehow I don't know how they program it that way, but I guess they can.
Well, you could. Right. I don't really know about that. One of the issues with regard to this though is when you ask it questions, it answers based upon the data you gave. So therein lies one of the really big problems that occurred very early on with artificial intelligence, is that human resource departments fed a whole bunch of information into about past practices of hiring companies. And they came out with the best person to hire would be a 25-year-old male, because that was what they hired in the past. That wasn't the best person to hire, but what the corporate practices gave. So the problem is garbage in, garbage out. It's the old problem. Now you have to feed it good information to get good answers. You need this. So one of the ways now artificial intelligence is being guided now is corporations use ChatGPT to answer questions they want to have answered. And then they have humans look at the answers that are given and say, well, no, that's wrong. We want you to go back and do X. So basically, the way you train artificial intelligence now is to actually have it interact with humans. Why? Because it's mathematics. There's nothing intelligent or, there's no intelligence. It's just mathematical statistics. So if you really want the best answer, you're gonna have to interact with another human being. So
That's good to know.
I think that's enough on.
Someone asked me, recently said, a younger pastor, were they gonna replace pastors with, chat GBT and things like that? And I just written the fourth Sunday, which was Christmas, Christmas Eve, meditation. I thought, what if I had chat GPT do that for me? So I ran it through that, or had my son do it. And
To write a sermon?
to write a sermon, and it presented a really very nicely grammatically correct version of retelling the combined Christmas story. And so it didn't distinguish Luke and Matthew, it just kind of gave the traditional narrative. It was very nicely said. It would have been a good retelling of the story. And with occasional a little bit of interpretation, but I thought I would never hold a job very long with that being my. Because there was nothing personal or reflective or nothing of emotion in it, and there was nothing of story and narrative in the piece other than narrating the Christmas story, which everyone would already know. It would have been boring to have heard the sermon. And it doesn't distinguish between, say, an evangelical perspective, a conservative, biblical literate perspective on how that story would be read, versus someone of a more progressive view who understands there's more than one story. There are two stories, and they don't always agree. So, that said, I told my friend, I said, don't worry about it. At least for now, you've got some time before they get good at this. And besides, I can't imagine anyone being very comforted when you're very sick, or if you're dying, or if your loved one's there, by having a computer sit at your side and not hold your hand.
Thank you, robot. Andrew, did you have some experience with this?
Yes, I've had a few interactions with that. And just like Chuck said, to me, it's a guideline that you need to use for whatever you're doing. Because just like they said, it's the information fed into the system, and it gives you a basic guidelines of what it is. I have a group of kids that are mentored in Ghana, and computers are not common. So I had introduced them to Chat GPT, and I just did it so that they will have the idea that there's some such a thing going on. So I gave them a topic to write an essay of. And knowing what they knew, they all went in there and had it write it for them. Everything was the same. Even though I knew. So when they came back to me, I told them that's the good thing about ChatGPT. It giving you the guidance. Now you make it your own. Step by step. So it was a story about their lifeline. You were not born the same people. So it can be that you all have the same story to tell people.
Right.
And that's what people are trying to do now. When you go to schools, any topic and everything, there's something about it in ChatGPT. But if you do that, you're not gonna pass. You're not gonna get what you're looking for, just like he said. So people are afraid, like in our job right now, people seem to think ChatGPT is coming to take over our jobs. And I keep telling them, no, if you know how to use it, it will enhance your skills rather than take it, because I learn for me and I make it more so that I will know what I want to know to make me, jobs that we do are repetitive. So if you do it again and again and you know how to cross over quickly, you spend less time answering questions and finding solutions to all problems. So that's what I think.
That was a wonderful lesson, but you couldn't have thought about a better better way of teaching them.
Yeah,
That's
That's a good
And
point.
Nancy, you had your hand up?
Chuck, what about, if somebody is a rogue and is, introducing something else to the big, AI machine, and he's typing away and it's garbage. I mean, it's dangerous garbage. And so how do you, do they have a way of right now filtering out the garbage, or is that the biggest problem that faces the future? I mean,
I don't believe they have a way of filtering out the garbage. Because it takes everything to guess. It's only a function of what the human feeds into it. There can be algorithms, but the algorithms would have to be written by someone who would have their own prejudices, and, ways of looking at the world. So that's one of the issues, this chat GTP is most usefully used if you use it as a chat procedure where you converse with it and you narrow its focus, keep narrowing and giving it more information. I read an article that I think it was in the New York Times, it's about a year ago, where a woman wanted to find out if chat GTP could describe her. And so she started interacting with chat GTP. It took her like 8 hours of interaction with it. And the way it finally described her was she fed it enough information about her that it could reflect what she told it.
oh.
And basically, it's only as good as what it gets. So there's the problem with it is artificial is correct. I'm not sure intelligence is correct.
Right.
Yes, it sounds like
Yes.
marketing. What's intelligent about it? We also hear about something we're supposed to know all about through the papers, machine learning.
Yeah.
Where, is it similar to what we're talking about? The more you give it and tell it made a mistake, it won't make that mistake again? Okay.
Yeah, well, that's, there's a lot of artificial intelligence, quote unquote, in marketing applications. In the 90s, I was part of a project at a retail company, who will go nameless. That the idea would be they would, as you came into the store, there would be a machine hidden in the front of the store that would scan you for one of their store credit cards in your wallet.
Wow.
And if it found it, it would read that card and instantly show to the people in the store who was in the store and whether or not they had a card, a store card. And then there would be information that would provide the sales staff at the store with information about what to try and sell these individuals.
Yikes.
And and how much attention to pay to them. And the machine got better and more honed as the project moved forward, and it got more data on what worked and what didn't work in terms of effective sales techniques.
Wow.
That's
Yes,
scary.
John?
Yeah, well, as all of you guys know, I worked at the Tribune for many years as a reporter and an editor and manager. And so during that time, I really got a good idea about who's telling the lies and who's telling the facts that are actually true. And so we still subscribe every morning. When we open the door of our building, pick up the newspaper. There's a College Tribune on top and New York Times on the bottom,
Mhm.
and I read them, and we read them both. Because they're facts, they have, they're factual things,
Yeah.
they're not. Fussing around and telling lies and stuff like this, they may be, we may be quoting somebody who's lying. But we reporters make it very clear, this is what John Doe said, even though Ann Doe said, no, that's not the case at all.
Mhm. That's important.
The source of your information is very important.
Seems to me that we have a big concern about the whole educational system. How do we educate our whole population to really understand
The big
now, I mean, the limitations of this, and, I mean, it seems to me that we're not doing very well already with some of these areas, so, you know.
And the politicians are taking advantage of that. You read stories about people down in Florida or Texas or something like that, and the government won't allow certain books to come into the libraries, so kids can read them. You just have to be only these ones.
Oh, those are even more vexing political problems.
That's right.
Well, there are other forms other than the large language model of artificial intelligence, and we had queued up.
Yeah, should we watch a little
The
bit of?
NOVA program. There's a NOVA program on artificial intelligence, which sort of introduces you to a wide range of these different quantitative mechanisms for developing things you call artificial intelligence.
Anyway.
We use that.
Well, there are different ways you can use it. You can scrape together or collect all of the information on a certain form of cancer. And have it look at this and,
People doing that, though?
oh, absolutely, they've been doing it for years.
This is where it may be
Very
helpful.
in the
Yeah, so
scientific-
if you can compartmentalize the
Medicine.
information, now you can compartmentalize lies too, right? That's the
what I
problem.
wanted to raise. What I want to raise is for you to think about before we look at the video. The big issue for me, the scary thing for everyone now, it makes us, I think, at the base level of some insecurity and fear, anxiety that we carry that we didn't have before. We've had it before, but I think it's intensified is where is the authority? And what do we trust? What do we not trust? How do we know we can trust anything? Right? If it's all a matter of opinion. And by the way, I've been listening to a 5-part series on the rest is history. It's 2 British guys back and forth, deeply knowledgeable historians. At 5 series, and they've been doing it on Luther back in the early 1400s. And before, he says, Luther radically changed our civilization, maybe one of the most important people to have done that. And he said, but Luther questioned the authority of the Catholic Church and basically tore down confidence in it. The printing press was one reason he was able to do this effectively, because it had not just been invented, it'd been around for a while, but he really made it the source where people could publish all kind of pamphlets. And he doesn't come out looking good in this, by the way. Luther was a vile, vulgar human being who was not below bringing down his enemies. He makes Donald Trump look like a simpleton. And like,
Everybody makes them look at the side.
but I mean, really, he makes he can just. The language was often had to do with excrement, and apparently in
But
those
back
times, that
in-
was the way of talking, but.
Back to the anxiety.
But the anxiety thing was, we get so much anxiety about things because, Luther would say, well, this is the solo scriptura, it's only the scripture, if we could just all listen to the scripture. But he forgot that fact that is everyone reads the scripture differently. And how do you know his opinion versus Meister Munster who came along during his time. And basically declared himself as the prophet from God, because the second coming was about to happen. He took his radical conclusions of Luther to a radical extreme and made Luther look conservative. And backed up the Peasant War, which was probably justified in some ways, and Luther was okay with it being violently put down. But his interpretation of scripture was, you can't believe a thing Luther is saying. So everyone was discrediting everyone. Now, it's come down to a place where individualism is everything. How do we decide something is true? Not only in matters of faith and just a fact. We used to have the news media, and you would trust the Tribune to some degree. And you rank which newspapers you rank. I don't always trust the New York Times, but if I get something from the New York Times and a couple other great papers, I'm probably going to put more credence to it. And there's certain people I listen to. But that's me making that decision. So when you listen to this, think about how much anxiety that has caused for all of us. And how much confusion it is when you take it to the realm of politics.
And I appreciate what you're saying, because as you just said, it's your decision to do this and that, and not do this and that. And that's exactly, I agree with that totally.
The technology's changed everything.
Do we know when we're interacting with ChatGPT, is it an app that you call up? Or does it present itself?
You mean artificial intelligence, or do you mean chat GTP? Which do you mean? Because you interact with artificial intelligence when you do messaging, and it gives you the next word.
The next word, that's exactly what I.
Google has already
It's gotten better and better.
instituted artificial intelligence to everything you do. Whenever you start composing something on Google, you get hints, don't you? And you get the next word or two words. Well, where do you think that came from? That came from the large language models. They're statistically likely you. It's probably you actually now. Yeah, it's what you would likely statistically write next. It's not what the average person would. It's probably you.
And it's amazing. that part of it I kind of like.
Yeah, so there you go. So there's some really nice things about artificial intelligence.
Unless you don't prove it, then you're in trouble.
It's kind of dangerous because like anybody that uses a cell phone or computer, you are being tracked.
Right.
That's right.
Can you guys believe that last week,
Yeah.
Pastor David spoke about the death in his family, and right after that, we got messages. You know, there is such a thing that people track, and there are people called whose profession is pen testers. They just tap into your system to let you know what mistakes you are, you know, how much vulnerable you are.
What
Mhm.
kind of messages were picked up as a result of this? What kind?
I got a message that he needed help.
Right, I did too.
We all did.
I think that's a different.
It was a text.
Text.
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
that was a different.
It was clear.
But what I'm saying is, they follow you. There's an algorithm that goes with that.
No, somebody broke into the church directory.
But
That's what happened.
still, they were able to do that and then take advantage of that information.
That's what I'm saying, he's been there, whoever it is, has been there for a long time, but not. You know, it takes time for them to get into,
Well, I got a message from Victoria also, so it wasn't just Jeffrey. I think someone hacked in.
There's no evidence that those two things were linked,
Yeah.
but to Andrew's point, it's possible, I guess.
Well, it was the same message basically, wasn't it? Kind of.
No, it was just, I need some help.
Well, that's what I mean.
There was no direct reference to our daughter's death.
Right.
But it happened at the same time, didn't it?
Is that
Sure.
coincidence or is that on purpose?
It could have been the same person, but there's a lot of unoriginal criminals who are doing the exact same thing. I get them at work all the time.
I went one step further and they wanted me to get a gift card.
Right.
Yep, that happens all the time.
It was not threatening, it was a spam, someone purporting to be me, asking for help.
Or
These often happen with emails,
This happened to be a text.
Now a text, right?
I've never heard of text spam until this happened. Well,
Mhm.
they have our telephone numbers in the church directory.
How
so
much
that's totally-
I appreciate now that I have cut off a year ago use of my laptop, Google, and all, and everybody knows, including the church, if you want to contact me, I have my telephone and it's a landline.
Mhm.
I can speak on the phone, who is calling? And if it says something, I know it's 2 rings and I'm not available. That's the spam that has been going on for years.
Mhm.
And rarely there is something, but if it's a statement of who is calling, I can recognize by the garble, they're probably calling from India, these people on the phone, repronouncing, like for instance, Pennypacker, my student who was often scientific, that's Pinopacker.
Right.
But you can usually ungarble the word to know that it's somebody you want to talk with. But that is much more advanced than just the phone ringing and you don't know who. At least we have them to say, but that's it. Goodbye, computer, and they can't track me down.
We're gonna listen to the video now, so we have time to get into that. We have next week to discuss this too.
Yeah, so just part of it. It's an hour documentary, but I thought maybe we'll just watch 20 minutes of it and then leave us some time to chat amongst ourselves. Let's see. From the Nova series. And this is a commercial for another show.
These events are climate change.
1 second.
Let's figure it out. It's science and it's conservation.
We're at a period of remaking the world. We can change the earth.
We're doing this for the future. If we don't, what then?
Okay.
Machines that think like humans.
Our dream to create machines in our own image that are smart and intelligent goes back to antiquity. Can you bring it to me?
Is it possible that the dream of artificial intelligence has become reality? They're able to do things that we didn't think they could do.
Go was thought to be a game where machines would never win. The number of choices for every move is enormous.
And now the possibilities seem endless. And this is going to be one of the greatest boosts to productivity in the history of our species. That looks like just a hint of some type of smoke. Identifying problems before a human can.
We taught the model to recognize developing lung cancer.
And inventing new drugs.
I never thought that we would be able to be doing the things we're doing with AI.
But along with the hope, this is a dangerous time, comes deep concern.
One of the first drops in the feared flood of AI-created disinformation. We have lowered barriers to entry to manipulate reality.
We're going to live in a world that we don't know what's real.
The risks are uncertain and potentially enormous. How powerful is AI? How does it work? And how can we reap its extraordinary benefits?
Civil looked here and anticipated that there would be a problem.
Without jeopardizing our future. AI revolution, right now, on Nova.
Good.
Tell me the backstory on Inflection AI. Our story begins with the making of this story.
The story of Inflection AI is an exciting one.
I was researching an interview subject. Who is Mustafa Suleiman? Something I've done 1,000 times in my 40-year career. But this time it was different. I wasn't typing out search terms. What is machine learning? I was having a conversation with a computer.
Sounds like an exciting project.
It felt like something big had changed.
Machine learning, ML, is a type of artificial intelligence.
And as it happened, I was focused on one of the innovators of this revolution. Okay, so if I do this, Mustafa Suleiman is co-founder of a startup called Inflection. It makes an artificial intelligence assistant called Pi.
So now you can speak.
I met them both in London.
It's fundamentally different, isn't it? Yeah, it's a conversational style. All of us humans learn through stories and through narrative and through interactive dialogue. And now the machine can kind of come alive and talk to you about whatever it is that's on top of your mind.
Tell me about the PBS program Nova. Chatbots can offer up quick answers, write poems, finish essays, and translate languages, among many other things.
Nova is a science documentary series produced.
They aren't perfect, but they have put artificial intelligence in our hands and into the public consciousness. And it seems we're equal parts leery and intrigued.
AI is a tool for helping us to understand the world around us, predict what's likely to happen, and then invent solutions that help improve the world around us. My motivation was to try to use AI tools to, invent the future.
The rise in artificial intelligence, AI technology is developing, and
Lately, it seems a dark future is already here.
predictions the technology could replace millions of jobs.
If you listen to the news reporting.
The moment civilization was transformed.
So how can artificial intelligence help us? And how might it hurt us? At the center of the public hand-wringing, how should we put guardrails around it?
We definitely need more regulations in place.
Artificial intelligence is moving fast and changing the world. Can we keep up?
Non-human minds smarter than our own.
The news coverage may make it seem like artificial intelligence is something new,
At a moment of revolution.
but human beings have been thinking about this for a very long time.
A very fine brain.
Our dream to create machines in our own image that are smart and intelligent goes back to antiquity. It's something that has permeated the evolution of society and of science.
Modern origins of artificial intelligence can be traced back to World War II and the prodigious human brain of Alan Turing. The legendary British mathematician developed a machine capable of deciphering coded messages from the Nazis. After the war, he was among the first to predict computers might one day match the human brain. There are no surviving recordings of Turing's voice, but in 1951, he gave a short lecture on BBC Radio. We asked an AI-generated voice to read a passage.
I think it is probable, for instance, that at the end of the century, it will be possible to program a machine to answer questions in such a way that it will be extremely difficult to guess whether the answers are being given by a man or by the machine.
And so the Turing test was born. Could anyone build a machine that could converse with a human in a way that is indistinguishable from another person? In 1956, a group of pioneering scientists spent the summer brainstorming at Dartmouth College.
And they told the world that they have coined a new academic field of study. They called it artificial intelligence.
For decades, their aspirations remained far ahead of the capabilities of computers. In 1978, Nova released its first film on artificial intelligence.
We have seen the first crude beginnings of artificial intelligence.
And the legendary science fiction writer Arthur C. Clarke was, as always, prescient.
It doesn't really exist yet at any level because our most complex computers are still morons, high-speed morons. Nevertheless, machines which can outpace their creators and therefore become more intelligent than us.
At the time, researchers were developing expert systems, purpose-built to perform specific tasks.
So the thing that we need to do to make machine understand, our world is to put all our knowledge into a machine and then provide it with some rules.
Classic AI reached a pivotal moment in 1997 when an artificial intelligence program devised by IBM called Deep Blue defeated world chess champion and grandmaster Garry Kasparov. It searched about 200 million positions a second, navigating through a tree of possibilities to determine the best move.
The program analyzed the board configuration, could project forward millions of moves to examine millions of possibilities, and then picked the best path.
Effective but brittle, Deep Blue wasn't strategizing as a human does. From the outset, artificial intelligence researchers imagined making machines that think like us. The human brain, with more than 80 billion neurons, learns not by following rules, but rather by taking in a steady stream of data and looking for patterns.
The way that learning actually works in the human brain is by updating the weights of the synaptic connections that are underlying these neural networks.
Manolis Kellis is a professor of computer science at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology.
So we have trillions of parameters in our brain that we can adjust based on experience. I'm getting a reward, I will update the strength of the connection that led to this reward. I'm getting punished, I will diminish the strength of the connection that led to the punishment. So this is the original neural net. We did not invent it, we inherited it.
But could an artificial neural network be made in our own image? Turing imagined it, but computers were nowhere near powerful enough to do it until recently.
It's only with the advent of extraordinary data sets that we have since the early 2000s that we were able to build up enough images, enough annotations, enough text to be able to finally train these sufficiently powerful models.
An artificial neural network is, in fact, modeled on the human brain. It uses interconnected nodes, or neurons, that communicate with each other. Each node receives inputs from other nodes and processes those inputs to produce outputs, which are then passed on to still other nodes. It learns by adjusting the strength of the connections between the nodes based on the data it is exposed to. This process of adjusting the connections is called training, and it allows an artificial neural network to recognize patterns and learn from its experiences like humans do.
Achar, how is it learning so fast? It is learning so fast because it's constantly predicting the future and then seeing what happens and updating their weights in their neural network based on what just happened. Now you can take this self-supervised learning paradigm and apply it to machines.
At first, some of these artificial neural networks were trained on vintage Atari video games like Space Invaders and Breakout. Games reduce the complexity of the real world to a very narrow set of actions that can be taken. Before he started Inflection, Mustafa Suleiman co-founded a company called DeepMind in 2010. It was acquired by Google 4 years later. When an AI plays a game, we show it frame by frame every pixel in the moving image. And so the AI learns to associate pixels with actions that it can take, moving left or right or pressing the fire button. When it obliterates blocks or shoots aliens, the connections between the nodes that enabled that success are strengthened. In other words, it is rewarded. When it fails, no reward. Eventually, all those reinforced connections overrule the weaker ones. The program has learned how to win. This sort of repeated allocation of reward for repetitive behavior is a great way to train a dog. It's a great way to teach a kid. It's a great way for us as adults to adapt our behavior. And in fact, it's actually a good way to train machine learning algorithms to get better. In 2014, DeepMind began work on an artificial neural network called AlphaGo.
that could play the ancient and deceptively complex board game of Go. Go was thought to be a game where machines would never win. The number of choices for every move is enormous. But at DeepMind, they were counting on the astounding growth of compute power.
And I think that's the key concept to try to grasp, is that we are massively, exponentially growing the amount of computation used. And in some sense, that computation is a proxy for how intelligent the model is.
AlphaGo was trained in two ways. First, it was fed a large data set of expert Go games so that it could learn how to play the game. This is known as supervised learning. Then the software played against itself many millions of times, so-called reinforcement learning. This gradually improved its skills and strategies. In March 2016, AlphaGo faced Lee Sedol, one of the world's top-ranking players, in a 5-game match in Seoul, South Korea. AlphaGo not only won, but also made a move so novel that Go cognoscenti thought it was a huge blunder.
That's a very surprising move. There's no question to me that these AI models are creative. They're incredibly creative.
It turns out the move was a stroke of brilliance, and this emergent creative behavior was a hint of what was to come: generative AI. Meanwhile, a company called OpenAI was creating a generative AI model that will become ChatGPT. It allows users to engage in a dialogue with a machine that seems uncannily human. It was first released in 2018, but it was a subsequent version that became a global sensation in late 2022.
This promises to be the viral sensation that could completely reset how we do things.
Cranking out entire essays in a matter of seconds.
Not only did it wow the public, it also caught artificial intelligence innovators off guard.
It surprised me a lot that they're able to do things that we didn't think they could do simply by learning to imitate how humans respond. And I thought this kind of abilities would take many more years or decades.
ChatGPT is a large language model. LLMs start by consuming massive amounts of text, books, articles, and websites, which are publicly available on the internet. By recognizing patterns in billions of words, they can make guesses at the next word in a sentence. That's how ChatGPT generates unique answers to your questions. If I ask for a haiku about the blue sky, it writes something that seems completely original.
If you're good at predicting this next word, it means you're understanding something about the sentence, what the style of the sentence is, what the feeling of the sentence is, and you can't tell whether this was human or machine. That's basically the definition of the Turing test.
So how is this changing our world? Well, it might change my world as an arm amputee, right?
Okay. Well, let's see. I'll stop sharing here.
Will we
Yeah.
see more of this? Next
Say
time.
Well, actually, you've seen it, hope.
Because I saw this, and that's what I was, the next part was, that's what I was gonna talk about. The whole thing in medicine is this.
That's where it seemed it was about to go. Yes, in developing human limbs.
Mhm.
Okay. So, yes.
I think this is an absolutely remarkable film, and I wonder if all of you sitting here are cognizant of the fact that 30 years ago, you could not have kept up with the quickness of change of pictures and words. Because you remember how things used to be very slow, and I know when they came out with faster commercials, it was hard to keep up with them. But the one thing that I figured out, saw here, the artificial AI, artificial intelligence, can be programmed for winning and stealing the things. But what about, where is the sense of the common good things? Like if you're programming for winning a national election for the presidency of the United States, and let's say Donald Trump wins again, let's say he'll have 2 wins versus Biden 1. but using quite a vitriolic stream of thinking and control for the people who support him. But where and how does artificial intelligence begin to think about what is good for everybody? It's not much.
A good question. It doesn't. It's completely amoral. It's just a machine. It doesn't care. It doesn't know good from bad.
It's just a set of mathematical equations. That's all it is.
And it's very sad, isn't it?
Well, it's not sad. It's just,
In
you
a
have to
way.
know what it is, and it is helpful in predicting why we talk about why you're typing. It'll tell you what your next word might be. So it is helpful. It's just, you need to know where it can be helpful or where it can be dangerous. That's where the humans come in. So the good news is, I don't think you've been taken out of the game.
No, I mean, laws can be passed. We can put editorial boundaries on this great data. A couple of hands, Lois, Eve, and Nancy.
This week, on news, either CNN or NBC, I forget which, came up the news that the Michigan senator is advocating death for a significant part of our population. He also went over to Uganda, where they have put a death penalty on all gays. And he endorsed them heartily and verbally, and it's been on TV this week. That being picked up on our machinery, can you imagine?
Michigan Senator
what's going on?
Gary Peters. Is that who you're talking about? Which senator?
He's Republican.
Yeah,
A
Gary.
two-syllable word that's kind of Scandinavian.
I think it's Gary Peters.
Is it Berkeley?
No,
Peters,
no.
That's all right. Well, whatever. We'll find him.
Points being
3 days
made.
ago.
Thank you.
You know, to Eleanor's good point. Every time there's a technological breakthrough, which goes back to the invention of, fire and the wheel. Well, there's a question of how will this be used for good or for ill? I mean, the question always comes back to us, how will we use it? It's not, is it good or bad on its own? It's how will we have the wisdom to use this for the flourishing of creation as opposed to the diminishment of creation. It's up to us. By itself, it is amoral. It's always up to human beings to not step out of the moral game, but ask
Right.
the moral questions.
Yeah.
About, does this promote life? Or is this actually, does this deal with that?
I like that. I like that scripture too. Jeffrey's
That's a
got a great scripture there. It just comes back and choose life or choose death when Moses is leaving the people and they're going to the promised land. And it's still the question, but I guess what concerns me is it seems like we don't understand ethical decision making as human beings very well. There's not much education in that, and so it's so easy for people just to give up their minds because some people the ends justify every means to many people, and is that all there is to ethics? And the complexity of it, I think, is much more complex than that.
It's a powerful tool and there's many possibilities and potential.
Nancy?
Well, I'm thinking of a joke. I can't tell you who's writing, but it is, I love Christ, but I worry about the Christians.
Good point.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes you think that one of the ways to bring that alive is to have a good admin or something, or just blast it. I mean, is there some way to provoke thinking?
Yeah.
I don't know, but I love that. What?
isn't it feeling though rather than thinking? Or sensitivity rather than.
Well, it's a communal good for all or something. I don't know. It's beyond me.
The universal truth.
There you are.
So one of the outcomes of artificial intelligence is the growth in the consumption of electricity. So if you want to think about climate change problem,
Yeah.
This is it.
artificial intelligence is actually making it worse.
Of course.
Because it requires all of this computing power to be so capable. And so there's huge data centers now being built
Mhm.
that are swamping the need for electricity in certain parts of the country because they suck all the electricity in to run these giant computer centers to operate artificial intelligence programs.
It also uses
Turns out-
preventive heat, does it not?
Excuse me? Oh, yeah, well, not only it creates heat, that you have to cool it then, that creates the need for even more energy.
That's not reported on very much at all.
No,
I
no,
mean-
but it's a really big deal.
For every
People are
data
investing
center.
Lots of money in these data centers. What?
Bitcoin takes a lot of energy too.
Same thing.
Mhm.
Bitcoin, you mine these coins, but when you mine a coin, you're connecting every transaction that could possibly be related to the one you just made. It goes all the way back years and years and years, so that any new transaction has to be related to all other transactions that could possibly be related to it.
The so-called
It's like the
blockchain.
same thing of scraping huge amounts of data
Yeah.
together. Yeah, it takes it.
Of course.
And a lot of land, it takes a lot of land.
Well,
No.
right, yeah, it takes land, but the energy.
And solar will never make up for it.
Well, it could help.
Certainly not at night.
No.
Certainly doesn't.
Or the quality of weather.
But the batteries to store the energy that's been harvested.
And the windmills do what they can, but still.
Well, that's a whole nother topic.
That is another existential crisis.
Yeah, this is, well, I'm really glad you brought this up. This is it's a epistemological issue, isn't it?
That's right. Since this is spiritual enrichment, wasn't it? Oh, yes. So what does this mean? There's the data could overwhelm us. We used to have editors, like John was saying. It's easier than ever to produce the data and to throw it out there on the internet or in your chat GPTs. But there's no agreed upon editor to tell us fact from fiction.
No.
I was told when I was a baby, I think it was the CBS News, Walter Cronkite at one point said, this Vietnam War, it's not winnable.
Not what,
It wasn't winnable anymore. The war was not winnable, and thus it ended. Because everybody believed that he was telling them the facts.
Ah,
There was no Fox to say, the facts don't matter,
tables.
or to make up new facts, alternative facts, as one party might call them.
Well, wasn't there the fairness doctrine, though, that if you reported, you had to report both sides of the story? You could not only give one side. There's a law in the United States that said if you reported, you had to give both sides of the story. And that was repealed during the George W. Bush administration. Yeah, and that created Fox News.
Right.
Yeah, so you no longer have to tell both sides of the story. When you report, you tell whatever side you wish. And we've lost that, I guess, mechanism for getting closer to the truth. Now we're actually further apart, I think. That was a very sad day in our legal
We
system.
should make a list of all the laws that have put us backwards since laws were made in the 40s or 60s or 80s that increased habitability of civilization, and in recent times wiping them out.
Well, that's out there. You can Google that too. But it's just another bit or byte of data out there. And it takes, a human moral agent to
Well, in one sense, I guess it empowers us to make our own decisions about what truth is, doesn't it? We no longer then have Walter Cronkite to tell us what the truth is. What you could say, this is unleashes our ability to make our own decisions. But then that means then you have to put a lot more energy into it. That means you have to read a lot more, you have to triangulate sources of data. And you have to talk to other people about what they do, which actually creates more work, so
I realize now why my sister thinks the way she does, because she's an AI machine.
Really?
It's so simple.
Eleanor?
Right.
So that people think less and less It's like, in that book, Brave New World, like people are taking someone every day to stay happy. People spend their time watching television, they spend their time at sports events, they spend their time watching sports events rather than going out and playing ball or doing these. You know.
There's where they're spending their time.
Yeah,
Right here.
that's
Right here.
Aldous Huxley
Our
invented this.
grandchildren are. into this
Thing
thing.
is, how do we reverse that? And how do we teach? How do we encourage and educate people to be sensitive to the greater good and to learn? It's, I think it's.
We need a new political party. You hear that?
The thing about that is the trend of the world away. Because as much as we're taking that as bad, it's good to an extent. Before, with me being here, being able to communicate with my people in Ghana, it would have taken a long time.
Right.
However, with this,
Yeah.
something might be happening there and I can be watching it right now.
Yes.
I can make transactions easily. So the more we, the world grows and things, we just have to find, just like you said, what is best for us. Now in the whole world, the most targeted thing of anything is data.
Yes, of course.
It's what is being targeted all over now. So we have people going into cybersecurity. There are some who are learning just to hack into other, to tell you your vulnerabilities. And, you have that, and make sure you have everything in place. You think about it, would you think about it bad? Somebody helping you by thinking about what the worst can be for you and do it. But he is doing it for good, but there's somebody also who also plans to attack you that same way. Just like we're talking about that, and when I worked at a bank, I got people coming there, they targeted older people.
Of course.
And they will tell you, bring this, you got this, how can you read a library? And they will tell you to send us them money for your charges. Why don't you take the charges out of them, bring them there, but you know that people are vulnerable, they don't ask questions. So you fall a victim and there you go, So
But I think Eleanor really put her finger on, why we're here is we're all struggling with how do we determine what is the greater good? I think since we're here, church, we've already decided that we are, the greater good is a really important thing to us.
Isn't
We have, through our culture, have decided that Christianity is one of the lenses through which we try and observe and understand what is the greater good. And that's probably need to return our discussion of artificial intelligence to sort of the Christian principles that could be used to determine how to use it wisely.
Thank you. That's why we're here, right? I mean,
So why we're here, the major thing, because the major thing of importance to all of us is our new change in leadership within this church. And we're losing Jeffrey, and we have to think about who can't be replaced, but who can take what we have started and move forward with it. I was thinking about this myself. I have, Jennifer Glykoff, when she was here, was a brilliant leader. Our congregation was growing. She is very sensitive to other people and what they're moving forward with. And I think, we have to move quickly, and it's very difficult to find good people in national searches and so forth. But she's a known quantity. And I know there was somebody at that time when they were looking for a senior minister, and she was a very strong leader here. And excellent music, she had studied it off at Northwestern. But she was a very good organizer, a very good leader, very and I just think she's a known quantity.